Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our April 27, 2023 Planning Board meeting. We're glad that you're here tonight, and we do appreciate your time. If you'd like to speak or address our board, please make sure you complete one of these green forms. We do have a 3-minute time limit on each speaker, and we do appreciate your participation. So thank you again for being here on this evening. And at this time, may we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Reverend Barhu,
Present.
Mr. McLean,
Here.
Mr. Newman, Mr. Robinson,
Present.
Mr. Servance. Is he here?
He's going to join us. We'll talk about that.
Out. He's here. Okay, thank you. Ms. Washington is here, and Mr. Weatherholt.
Here.
You have a quorum?
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, one of our board members, Mr. Cervantes, wants to attend remotely.
One of our members wants to attend remotely, Mr. Cervantes, and in order for him to do that, he needs to give a very brief explanation. It doesn't need to be in detail, stating what his special circumstances are, and then the board needs to vote to determine whether to allow it for cause.
Okay, Mr. Cervantes, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good evening, board.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The reason why I'm not there presently is presently I'm in a medical condition that prohibits me from being there in person.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you. So good to hear from you. I'm glad you're doing better. Board may have.
Good to hear everybody. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed have the same right. Carrie, Surveillance, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
And one thing, I
Thank
think
you.
it's pretty typical that the member appearing remotely, there's a little bit of a lag. So just remember that if you turn to Mr. Cervantes during the meeting and ask him a question or need to give him a minute to jump in.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. We have our minutes. We have actually 2 months of minutes that we need to go back and visit. Let's do the February 23rd minutes first. May I have a motion?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed have the same right. Thank you. That carries. And then the March 23rd, 2023 Planning Board minutes.
Move approval.
Second. Okay. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed have the same right.
Aye.
It carries. Thank you. We'll move to item number 4. Ms. Washington, would you read, please?
Certainly. Item number 4, INA Group, Major Subdivision, Preliminary Plat, DEV 2022-198, Quasi Judicial Hearing.
Good evening, board members. Good to see you all. My name is Paula. I'm a planner with the city. And tonight I am here to present a request by Michelle Wittick, PE, of Zev Cohen and Associates, Inc., on behalf of Mark Hunziker of INA Group, LLC, the property owner, to approve a preliminary plat for the development of a 348-lot single-family residential subdivision on a total of 225 plus or minus acres of land. The site is generally located east of and adjacent to the city's municipal stadium and south of and adjacent to the city's water and wastewater treatment plant. The aerial view here does show that the property is vacant and undeveloped. The project does hold a future land use of level 1 and level 2 residential, with a small portion being mixed use. It is surrounded by a majority of level 1 residential to the east and south, and a portion of the area to the north also being government institution. Portions of the west encompass level 2 residential, existing potential parks, and government institution. The project is currently zoned as Planned Development General, surrounded by the same to the east, south, and a portion to the west, with the balance of the west and north being single-family residential. Here you can see the preliminary plat map, and all of these things were included in your staff report. The proposed major preliminary plat development is consistent with Article 7 of the Land Development Code, subject to the INA Group Plan Development Agreement. Approval of this preliminary plat will allow the applicant to move forward with the final plat approval process. Staff recommends approval of the major subdivision preliminary plat for the INA Group LLC, allowing a 348-lot development on 225 acres of land. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission. This does conclude my report, and I do believe that the applicant is here if you happen to have any questions.
Okay, at this time, are there any questions for staff?
Brief one, Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
could.
sir.
Paul, I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly, that originally last year, we approved the district agreement for 352 single-family residential units, and what's being asked for is 348?
Yes.
Difference of 4. I'm assuming that's for the stormwater infrastructure, that's difference, am I right?
Well, the applicant can be able to address that specifically. However, what we did find is that they decided to do less than what actually was approved, so they can be able to address that.
Okay, good enough, thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Washington?
No, I was just going to ask her to speak into the mic.
Oh,
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, Jessica Gow at Cobb Cole Law Firm, 149 South Ridgewood Avenue. If I talk faster than normal tonight, it's because I'm going to a magic show at the Peabody at 7:30.
Oh.
So, okay. Really excited. Fun fact for this plat, and I'll hit on the questions. I've tried to go through what I expect some of you may ask. This site is 225 acres. My fun fact is that 70% of it is open space. In recreational areas, if you throw in the ponds, that's another 10%, so 80% of the overall site in open space and stormwater. On the unit count, between zoning and final engineering, you always tweak it a bit and lose a few. Stormwater needs and preservation of on-site wetlands. We've got 88 acres of on-site wetlands that will be preserved. So somewhere in there, we lost 4 lots along the way.
Good enough.
Second fun fact about the project is this project is coming in and constructing really the first mile of the Dunn Avenue extension that we have been talking about forever. So we're really excited about that. We're in final talks with the county and the city on alignment and design, access to the stadium, and how all of that works. So that will be awesome. You can see the extent where we'll construct to our second entrance, stub out for the county to take it from there and the design. The developer, our contact is Jeff Reeder. He's associated with Reeder Communities. This is for Planning Board Member McLean. Reeder Communities is really active in the Orlando market. You might know the Rivington Master Plan Project in DeBerry. They were associated with that one. And they've got a few pockets as well in Celebration over by.
Yeah, I knew I wouldn't have to ask.
We like to be prepared here. And those are my fun facts. So any other questions, happy to answer them.
Okay, are there questions for applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Robinson?
I like your fun facts.
Good.
I see you try to predict me. No, I like the fact that you're including your green space. One of my questions, a follow-up on your green space in terms of the environmental designs that you have. I see you have a lot of open space and detention area. So you're taking care of the animals and the wildlife.
So really, if you see this on the screen, it's a good snippet. This site, the full boundary isn't shown. Development footprint of the lots is really along that Dunn Avenue corridor. All the stormwater is clustered in there where we want to drain to be close. And then the remainder of the site is really just kind of the wetland areas and things like that. So we're keeping the larger natural tracts intact, which we like to do for wildlife crossings and habitat.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think it's commendable
Thank you.
that they're building something that close. We always have problems having development next to treatment plants. It's an age-old problem that cities have dealt with for years. and see something like this. I think it's great for the community, and I really think it's going to be a good project.
Thank you. Yep. And if you guys remember, I think when we brought the zoning through on this, that was a discussion topic. And there's a provision in the PD agreement that states that we'll provide notice of the proximity to that treatment plant to buyers when they come in.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mrs. Zavance, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you. All right, Jessica was the only green sheet I had. Are there any other speakers for or against this item? Okay. Okay, if you would, come up and state your name and address, and if you can just fill that out and give it to our secretary, please.
Jenny Nazak, 501 Harvey. This sounds really good. When I first saw 225 acres and like 340, I was like, "Ugh, that's not dense. That's just the same old, same old." So to hear that, I'm just like, yeah. And it's right near lots of things, and it's all good. It sounds really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have, is that for this item? Okay, we'll continue then. If I have no other speakers for this item, we'll continue. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, move approval of agenda item number 4, major subdivision preliminary plat, DV 2022-198, INA Group.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right.
Aye.
It carries. Thank you.
Got 'em in there.
Ms. Washington, may we have item number 5, please?
Certainly. Item number 5, First Amendment to the Buc-ee's PDG rezoning DEV 2022-048 quasi-judicial hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
Anna Ward, Senior Planner with the city. So this is a request by Parker Minchenberg with Parker Minchenberg and Associates, and it's on behalf of Buc-ee's Florida LLC, Buc-ee's Limited, LTD, and 95 LPGA Property Owners Associated Incorporated, who are the property owners within the Buc-ee's PD. It's to amend the Buc-ee's PD to allow for a monument sign with electronic message center gas prices at the location of the Buc-ee's gas station, which is 2330 Gateway North Drive. And the proposed sign also includes off-site advertising for the proposed Buc-ee's car wash that will be located at 1610 Technology Boulevard. So as you can see here, the site is located in the northwest quadrant of LPGA Boulevard and Technology Boulevard, right along the highway, I-95. As you can see from the aerial view, the only thing currently developed out there is the Buc-ee's gas station, but we do have 2 site plan applications in. One is for a car wash, for the Buc-ee's car wash, and one is for a medical complex on the corner of Gateway North and Technology. The zoning on the property is planned development general. It's located in the Buc-ee's PD, and the future land use on the property is split between interchange commercial and mixed use. So just to summarize a little bit of the history, in 2018, the City Commission approved the Buc-ee's plan development. It rezoned 35 acres to allow for the Buc-ee's gas station and travel center, which is now fully developed, and it allowed for additional commercial uses to be developed, including the Buc-ee's car wash and now the medical office complex that we are reviewing. And the DV numbers are on the screen just in case you all wanted to find out more information about those projects. The First Amendment is requested to allow for an additional monument sign. It will have electronic message center gas prices for Buc-ee's, but then it will also advertise the car wash, which is located within the same PD but on a separate parcel. So as you can see here, it kind of shows you the overall layout of the subdivision with the stars showing the location proposed for the EMC sign, and then the 2 arrows showing lot 1 and 4 being combined to allow for the Buc-ee's car wash. The applicant is proposing to develop an 100 square foot EMC sign which will be 8 feet high and approximately 4.2 square feet, will be dedicated towards EMC gas prices. The sign complies with all development standards for the EMC's sign criteria that's in the code, with the exception of the off-site signage, which the code restricts. Although this property is in one development, so it's really kind of functioning to advertise what is also being offered by Buc-ee's on the car wash parcel. So a majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission. And the item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the city commission for first reading on June 7th and for second reading on June 1st, 2023. And provided the LDC modifications are approved, staff recommends approval of this amendment application. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, are there questions for staff?
A couple, if I could, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
and,
Mr. McLean.
and this might be more of a Dennis question than a your question. Assuming that we move forward on this, we must be feeling pretty confident that we're going to approve the car wash when we are, prior to doing that, we are setting up offset advertising for said car wash. I'm just curious, it just seems like maybe we have this in reverse.
Well, I think the condition of the agreement that our office would insist on to preserve the off-site signage regulations under the Land Development Code is that that off-site sign would only be allowed if it's to operate a business owned and operated and, you know, with the same trade name as the gas station. And I got to tell you, this isn't something I've had a chance to talk about on this particular item with staff before, but it's very similar to what we've done in the past, which really means it's an off-site sign only because of the very technical language of the Land Development Code. The real purpose of that is to prevent them from advertising products that aren't sold anywhere near. So this would be part of the PD.
Wouldn't be sold by that particular retailer. I understand. Well, Mr. Gross, since I've got to the second item I was curious about is that we're dealing with this item, and we're going to be dealing later on tonight with another item number 8, talking about the electronic message centers. Is there anything in 8 that would particularly be related to number 5? In other words, are we perhaps, would it make sense to reverse the order?
I don't know the answer to that offhand. You'd have to ask planning staff.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that the item 8 actually, if it were in place right now, this may not even be needed, although it is part of a PD, and the PD does dictate what kind of signs, which is why they have to request the allowance to have this sign within the PD. But we can talk about 8 a little bit later on, but the idea of 8 was to open up the EMC type signage to other locations throughout the city and not just these big developments that have them.
And my point, and I apologize, Mr. Gross, put you on the spot there, is to be sure that we're in a position we're not assuming. We're not assuming that decisions after this one will happen that will affect this particular item. That's
So
looking for.
just to clarify regarding the site plan approval is not contingent on approval of the sign. Provided they meet all of the standards in the Land Development Code and the PD for the site plan, they can get it approved, and they do have signage in the PD allotted to them. They are just requesting one additional sign, but that wouldn't hold up the site plan approval because presently they're not showing this sign as being permitted.
Okay.
And then the other thing related to the EMC is, so this site complies with all of the standards for an EMC sign that are presently identified in the code, aside from the off-site signage component to it. The only reason they have to request an amendment is because it is a planned development, and they didn't identify an EMC as a sign type that they wanted in the initial approval.
Okay.
But if it were straight code, they could have the sign, as long as it didn't have off-site signage.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson?
I was along the same path. My concern, well, it's not a concern, but my comment would be, if we do approve item 8 as stated, would this waiver be moot? And no? Would it be moot maybe later on?
No, it's still,
Yeah, the main purpose for this amendment is to allow, in a very limited fashion that's been described, the EMC sign to be used as an off-site sign. And as Hannah pointed out, if this were straight zoning, the CMC sign would actually have just been approved by sign permit. And the reason why this isn't uncommon, I mean, with the plan development, you want a uniform sign program. So part of the price that you pay is once you've had your PD approved, changes that other people might just get approved as a sign permit could require an amendment to the PD because there's an interest on the city's part in making sure that the plan development remains coordinated, including with regard to sign types, the architecture of the signage.
Consistency.
And in this case, since technically the Buc-ee's gas station and the Buc-ee's car wash are in different lots, as a very technical proposition, that would be considered off-site signage under the Land Development Code.
Okay.
Yeah.
And really, the portion of the sign that's going to advertise the car wash is not going to have an EMC component. The EMC is just for the gas prices at the gas station. The other piece of the sign that's static copy is for the car wash.
Question?
Comment? No, I wanted a question.
Okay. Mr. Robinson?
Maybe for the applicant.
Would you speak up, please? Or is
said-
your mic on?
Hello?
Okay.
Okay.
Will your sign be comparable to the other signs along that strip?
For the record, Parker Minchenberg. First off, 1729 Ridgewood Avenue. Hannah, thank you for an excellent report. Yes, it will be.
Okay.
And kind of, Michael, to help you a little bit, I did submit 5 sets for final sign-off today for the car wash. You guys don't get to see the car wash because it's not greater than 20,000 square feet, but a lot of nice landscaping, real proud of it. You guys will like it, I hope. Going to be a little bigger car wash than some. And it is
That's the rumor.
owned and operated by Buc-ee's. And basically, this is an off-site sign because the car wash sits on lots 1 and 4, and Buc-ee's sits on lot 5, so that's a little nuance. And the other thing that was mentioned is going into the original PD, we kind of told in the PD exactly where all the signs were going to go and how big they were going to be. And then after Buc-ee's opened up, they decided to build the car wash. And I wanted to have a sign, when you go to Buc-ee's to get gas, there'll be a sign that says free car wash. In addition to that, when we did Buc-ee's a number of years ago, there was resistance to the EMC signs. You know, you had to have a sign program and a bunch of other things. And I think the city has sort of changed their stance on this. So the part of the 100 square feet that's actually EMC, I think it's 4 square feet. It's just, right now, they get up in the morning and they put the gas price, it's a card or whatever. This will enable them to set the gas prices on a daily basis, and it'll be on an electronic reader
Much
board.
like Sam's Club across the street.
Yeah. At the time they did Buc-ee's, that wasn't really a thing you could do. So,
Understood.
and here to answer any other questions I can.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions for our applicant?
I'm good.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Don't
Appreciate
forget
it.
about Tony. Don't forget about Tony.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Savans, do you have any questions on this item?
That is a blame.
Tony, are you out
No
there?
questions, huh?
No, I don't have any questions. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank
good,
you.
thank you.
Just making sure you're still with us. All right, thank you. I don't have any other green forms for this. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this item? Not, may I have a motion, please?
Yes, provided the LDC recommendations are accepted, move approval of agenda item number 5, Plan Development General Rezoning, DV 2022-048, First Amendment to Buc-ee's PD.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Okay. Opposers have the same right? All right, carries. Thank you very much. Now we have item number 6, Ms. Washington.
Item number 6, First Amendment to Sunglow Mini Storage PD and preliminary plat, PDG rezoning, DEV 2022-132 and DEV 2022-226 quasi judicial hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
Okay. So I have the DV number listed wrong on the cover sheet of my PowerPoint, just so y'all know. But it is the DV numbers that you mentioned. So this is a request by Philip Hollis with Flagship Companies Group LLC and it's on behalf of Sunglow Construction Incorporated, is to amend the Sunglow Mini Storage Complex PD to replace the approved development plan for a self-storage mini warehouse facility or mini storage complex, office uses, and covered RV parking, and incorporate a 2-lot preliminary plat for the subdivision. So the property is located 500 feet north of LPGA Boulevard and the Jimmy Ann or Wesley Street intersection, as you can see here. The site is vacant and undeveloped presently. The zoning on the property is mixed use, or the future land use on the property is mixed use, and the zoning on the property is planned development general. So a little bit about the project history. The City Commission approved the Sunglow Mini Storage Complex PD, rezoning 12.9 plus or minus acres to allow for a self-storage or mini storage complex and office uses, and that occurred in 2020. The previously approved plan included the following development program. It had 598 self-storage units within 11 one-story buildings, totaling approximately 91,475 square feet. It had 52 covered RV spaces and 20,875 square feet of office, a combination of office warehouse uses. So as you can see, here is the previously approved development plan. So I've highlighted, these were all the storage buildings initially proposed, covered RV parking, and then the office uses, which were at the front of the development. Now, the applicant is requesting to replace that approved development plan with the following development program. It still keeps the same uses, it just modifies the layout. The initial PD was very specific on what was permitted and proposed, so they had to come in to replace this plan and accommodate their new intent. So now they're proposing a 3-story, 88,062 square foot climate-controlled building that'll have 750 self-storage units, 101 additional self-storage units within 5 one-story buildings, totaling approximately 19,845 square feet, 81 covered RV spaces, and 19,625 square feet of office uses. So as you can see on this plan, this is the area, the larger box is the 3-story structure, and then there's some smaller self-storage units around the perimeter. Then we've got a larger area of covered RV parking, and then we've got the office uses that remain on the front. One of also the main distinctions between this development and what was previously approved was they're now subdividing the property into 2 lots, whereas previously it was a 1-lot subdivision. So I just wanted to get into some of the details and then some of the waivers they're requesting. So with regard to building perimeter landscaping, because this use is going to be storage units with roll-up doors, and then it also includes the office warehouse uses that'll have roll-up doors, they've requested to waive the building perimeter landscaping where the design limits the placement of the landscape materials, but in all other areas, they will be compliant. And there's a detailed table on the development plan that you all can take a look at for those areas. Parking is proposed to be LDC compliant. Perimeter buffers, screening from adjacent incompatible uses, that is also proposed to be LDC compliant. Signage is LDC compliant, although when I was preparing my presentation today, I noticed that the monument sign that they're proposing will actually advertise both developments. So if you go back, the monument sign is located in the southeast corner of the property at the main entrance. There was a little notation on that sign plan that stated that it would advertise both developments, so they actually do have to request a waiver for an off-site sign, and I just incorporated that into the presentation so you all were aware of that request. And then the final kind of nuance of this is that they're proposing a 2-lot preliminary plat, which is proposed and is as an exhibit to the plan development agreement, and they're requesting to waive the frontage requirements on a public street for Lot 2. So there will be an easement going from Lot 1 to Lot 2 that will allow for access to Lot 2. So as you can see here, we've got Lot 1 and Lot 2. Just so you can see kind of the limits and the configuration. So Lot 2 will not have frontage on a public street, but will be accessed via an easement that will go through Lot 1. So provided the land development code modifications are accepted, staff recommends approval of the First Amendment to the Sunglow Mini Storage PD to replace the approved development plan for self-storage or mini storage complex, office uses, and covered RV parking, and incorporate a 2-lot preliminary plat for the subdivision. Majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission, and the item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission for first reading on June 7th and second reading on June 21st, 2023. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, questions for staff?
A couple, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
No question.
Kind of looking at this, it looks like the reason for the 2-lot preliminary plat for the subdivision going from 1 to 2 is that we're dealing with separate ownership.
That's how I would understand it, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the intent.
Do we know who these two entities are? Obviously, we know who's coming requesting this, but do we know who the other entity is?
So
that's
I'm-
causing this split?
I'm not entirely sure, but I think that Joey, who represents the
knows.
applicant,
Okay, very good.
has that information.
Very good. Next question. I'll move on from that one. The neighborhood meeting, the information that we have here that happened last September, there were a number of questions that were asked from the folks that attended. My question is, were those questions addressed adequately? That we have the questions, we don't have the answers. So I'm just curious if that's the case, or do you know, or who I can ask that might?
So staff doesn't attend those, but Joey should be able to respond.
Okay, and I have another question about that, but I'll let you get up and I'll ask that.
I like
Okay.
to
Appreciate it.
ask
Thank
one
you.
thing.
You're welcome.
Okay.
On the landscaping, why was that wavered?
The building perimeter landscaping? So as I stated in my presentation, they're waiving it for a portion of the buildings because some of these buildings are designed to have roll-up doors and you can't put landscaping in front of a door.
But on the perimeter,
So they haven't requested any waivers from the perimeter landscape requirements, just the building perimeter versus the property perimeter.
Okay. Mr. Robinson? Go ahead, Tony. You have a question? Hold on, Mr. Robinson.
That's fine.
No, I don't have any questions.
Oh, okay. All right, Mr. Robinson?
With the off-sign waiver that you're
The offsite sign.
how does that affect the neighbors? I didn't.
The sign?
Yes.
So the sign, the content, we don't really regulate. The offsite sign is really intended to advertise the self-storage facility, which is located on Lot 2, and then the offices. I don't anticipate any other impacts with regard to the sign.
Would it comply with our current sign requirements?
So the sign dimensions and area does comply with the code. It's just that they're requesting to advertise the 2 parcels and those individual developments on the same sign.
Would it be an EMC sign?
It's not an EMC, no.
Okay then, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. I just had an observational question. It seems like we're building a lot of storage places, and we're building smaller houses and telling people to buy more and put it in storage. So may we hear from the applicant, please?
Very observational.
Yes.
So true.
I think there's a correlation. Good afternoon, Joey Posey, 420 South Nova. I'm attorney for the landowner and the developer, and I guess trying to hit all these in order. Really, the small change that we're talking about here is that we're trying to reconsolidate a lot of this storage into a nice climate-controlled building. There's a beautiful elevation I didn't see in the application or in the presentation. I wish I had with me, but really that's the main crux of what's going on here, because a lot, the original plan, and again, nothing wrong with this, but it was a roll-up door concept that it's a little different than you're seeing a lot of these more modern facilities that are doing. To maybe speak to the waivers real quick, just to be sure that it's very clear what we're doing. The buffers, yes, that it's the perimeters of the small buildings. You can't necessarily put the landscaping in front of the door, so we could, but it would be destroyed. I guess is the issue. So otherwise, we're happy to do all the the rest of the plantings. There's nothing from the perimeter of the property we're adjusting, so that's a good thing. And also the added benefit of this project is now on all 4 sides of the storage facility, you have the 1-story buildings. So as an addition to the landscaping, you have the shorter buildings, which serve as an additional buffer. So the original concept didn't include that. It had the RV storage on the one side of the property. The signage, that's an interesting point Hannah made, and it's an unintended consequence of us trying to subdivide this, but the original concept as a unified development had the same signage dimensions. So yeah, I guess the code has got the better of us this time, and that's, it seems more technical than anything, and yes, they would be trying to advertise on the same monument sign, so the waiver would be necessary. In the public street, just to be sure, again, had this been a unified development, it's not a necessity, but because you have this very nice developer over here who has done a number of these and can speak in depth and in detail about these types of developments, that it's going to be a private street, essentially. So again, the implications of the code, it's a private street, meaning the developer has to maintain it. That sounds like a good idea from the city's perspective, because it's not my problem. And and you don't have to maintain a public street, but that's really it. So it's the quirkiness of the code that's keep trying to wade through that. Speaking to the neighborhood comments, and we had a great neighborhood meeting. There was a handful of folks that showed up, and again, I probably should have gone into this a little more in detail into the answers, but just speaking to them generally, we were talking to them about what things we can do out there and putting in certain plants. We're really flexible, and we had a lot of reception on just making sure it's screened. That's really the goal there. And the building sits so far back that goodness, you would not be able to see this, but we're just trying to be receptive to the neighbors. The PD amendment in itself is really the same use, the same configuration, except for it's in a building, and a very nice building, and that's the nature of the change. The project itself will help area flooding because, again, those more stringent St. John's requirements, you're having the big retention in the back, and again, this is a lot of overall benefit to the area. The wall is now the buildings on all sides, so that's actually a plus. That wasn't in the original development plan on all sides. Security, again, another aspect of it that's very nice is that now that you have the building, it's easier to control. It's not the roll-up doors in the outdoors, so the security is even better with this concept versus the original concept. And the site connecting to adjoining roads, it's the same as proposed on the original PD. It's the connection off of Wesley. It would serve both parcels, and that's really it. It's pretty straightforward, and if there's any specifics maybe I can delve into on what you guys are curious about the design of the project. The developer is here. We have also the engineer of record, and this is a really exciting project, especially since you get to redesign the same thing that you already got approved and at least do better. So, but I'm available for any questions if I didn't hit on any topics.
Okay. Mr. McLean,
please. Oh, thank you.
And
thank you,
then
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Robinson follow.
Just, and thank you for explaining those questions and the response. I appreciate that. There was no one had any discussion about the fact we're talking a 3-story building, and on every side there is nothing similar to a 3-story building. You mentioned earlier about that being far back, and perhaps the sight lines are not an issue, but I want to put it out.
Yes, no, of course. It did get brought up, but the reception from the neighbors that did show up was that it's a non-issue from their perspective, because the folks that did show up were more interested in seeing something out there because it has homeless people just coming and going, and that the difference between the 3-story building that's so far set back versus the roll-up doors, it's a win-win for everybody. But I can only speak for the neighbors that were at the meetings, the last meeting we had. So that was the takeaway.
Now tell me about the 2 separate owners that's facilitated this
yes.
platform, please.
Currently, the plan is obviously you have Flagship, who's done a number of these, doing the development for the.
Where are they out of? Locally.
Lake Mary.
Beautiful.
So
my old stopping grounds. Good by me.
Right, and the other folks involved are actually the property owner. So it's a joint effort. Obviously, they're interested in running and designing their storage facility, but as part of that, we're going to probably do the pads for the office complex, but it's going to be controlled by the owner. Okay. So it's another local guy.
Always like to hear local people doing local projects.
Yep, exactly.
Great.
We're in the same boat.
Okay. Mr. Robinson?
I live right near where you're building this project here. And what's the status, if you know, of the traffic light?
The one at Grand Preserve or?
No, the one that's supposed to be built at Jimmy Ann and LPGA.
Oh, I don't.
The traffic, and it's so, you're proposing to bring in RVs and offices. So the traffic is already terrible along the road right there. There's a school down the road. There is a neighborhood. There are neighborhoods. And getting in and out of Jimmy Ann onto LPGA is such a scary thing.
Well,
and dangerous. So what's the status of that traffic light that's needed so badly at that
I can't
intersection?
necessarily speak for the light, but I can speak for the development, just to be sure that in terms of commercial use, and I'm sure you guys have heard this, this is one of the lowest impact generators when you're talking about traffic, and that doesn't necessarily solve an existing issue, but when you're talking about what could be there in terms of what's compatible, what possibly could be out there, because at once upon a time, this was slated for multifamily, single-family residential, and again, those have come and gone, but in terms of what possibly could be there, and if you're trying to find something that alleviates traffic, storage is a great.
Storage is the best one.
And, but not to take away from your point, which is the traffic light, I
Well,
think I would
it's not
defer
so
to
much
staff.
it's not so much the traffic, but the type of traffic.
Right.
I'm not talking about so much the quantity, but the type of traffic. You're bringing in RVs. And have you ever seen an RV try to exit off of Jimmy Ann onto LPGA? That is so dangerous. There is no traffic light. There is no traffic control at that section.
Yeah, let me just mention that the way that permitting approvals work is that the plan development establishes uses. At some point after the plan development, they would need to apply for a site plan. And as
Exactly.
part of that site plan, the Land Development Code requires them to provide a traffic impact analysis. And if that traffic impact analysis shows that the project burdens the roadway system, they have to, under statute, pay their proportionate fair share that then gets contributed, most likely this is on a county road, to the county, which then decides how to spend that money. And under state statute, that's what we can require. We can't require them, for example, to make up, he mentioned this, Mr. Posey mentioned this, we can't make them make up for existing deficiencies in the roadway. That's an exaction, and that's why the legislature passed the Proportionate Fair Share Act. So it could be that your prediction, Mr. Robinson's right, and if so, depending upon the level of impact, that will affect their proportionate. Provide more money for for funding,
Exactly.
stuff like that.
Well, should we ask them to proactively says that they will insist on a traffic, well, they're supposed to build a traffic light at that intersection. They're supposed to be building one. So could you?
I'll tell you what I know about the traffic light at
some
LPGA.
recommendations maybe to say that, we're going to invest in our
We can't,
share.
well, we
can ask.
Well, first off, the light itself, the county did a warrant study and determined that the light is warranted at that location. From what I understand, the funding is not there to be able to pay for the light right now. However, yeah, I agree. We will go through the traffic impact analysis and review the impact through concurrency and the prop share payment. We won't control where that prop share payment goes, the county does. Now, we can work with the county. Typically, prop share shouldn't be used for traffic signals because it doesn't increase capacity on a roadway. It just really deals with operation. We can work with the county, though, and see if we can get some way to get that light moving forward if this development were to come in.
Exactly.
If this development doesn't come in, we're still working with the county on what we can do to try to get that light moving forward, so.
Right.
There's a major safety issue.
And just to echo what Dennis is saying, obviously, we want the same thing you want, that this is an opportunity to keep that discussion moving. And we're on the same page that, obviously, we can't condition it per se, but I will at least put on the record that we want to be part of that discussion to make sure that happens, because it's in everybody's best interest. And again, that we recognize what the point is and what the concern is, The only thing I'd maybe push back a little bit is that, given the uses that are possible there, that, folks that want to leave their RV there or leave their stuff there, that's a good thing, because the alternatives that, in terms of what traffic generation can cause out there, may cause a bigger issue in general, but we want to be part of that discussion. So I do appreciate
And the solution.
And the solution, of course.
We can talk about it all day, but without a solution,
Of course.
it's
There's
just,
no point in talking if we're not
Yeah.
getting somewhere.
Yeah. So you can commit to being part of the solution.
Yes, 100%.
Okay then. Thank you.
Okay, and just to piggyback a little bit on Mr. Robinson, absolutely that intersection, especially if you're headed north on Jimmy Ann, making a left turn on LPGA, it's almost impossible sometime. And we do have students and their families that live in that general area, and it's just a safety issue. So, of course. Thank you. Ms. Washington had a comment?
No,
Oh, you had
I'm
it. Okay.
fine.
What up?
I think it's the storage facility being climate controlled. I think that's the way to go. And it's definitely an asset to especially all the people, smaller homes or storage. And I think it's very commendable to be put there.
Okay, Mr. Surveillance, do you have any comments?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Okay. I have Mr. Posey. I got you. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. We have Ms. Kimberly Buck. If you would like to speak? No? Thank you. Mr. Philip Hollis? Okay. Would like to speak? No? All right. Moving right along. Mr. James Carter. Thank you, sir. If you
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Good evening. If you state your name and address, please.
My name is James Carter, 1275 Cedar Circle. My property is directly behind the project right there. And so my wife and I have been there for over 35 years. We've been there for a long time. And our main concern that's important to us and my neighbors, because some of them didn't get an invitation to come to this meeting. The most important thing is the impact to the environment. There's a lot of wildlife back there, and there's a lot of Gulf turtles back there. We got a lot of wildlife that I think we need to be concerned with. Well, I was at the first meeting that was at the Holiday Inn. I spoke with you. We had discussed having at least a 50-foot minimum buffer between Taylor and whatever they were going to build going towards the site, going to the south. And that would help with the wildlife and the noise coming off LPGA between the single family and the storage facility. You have a tremendous amount of woods that's gone now on LPGA from all these apartments that are being put up. And where I live, LPGA now sounds like I-95. I mean, it's terrible. I'm not too far from you. I want to know what impact this project's going to have on Taylor Street, which is directly behind us. If there's going to be additional traffic, I want to make sure there wasn't going to be any driveways or any egress going to the site off of Taylor, so there's not more road construction back there than what we already have. Another concern that my neighbors and I have is in case of a hurricane or tropical storm, what's the chances that the ponds overflow and flow to our property? Because right now, that land is pretty level, or it might even be a little bit higher than Taylor Road. And then it goes where our property is, which is about the same as Taylor Road. And then it goes down to Cedar Circle that floods now just at a heavy rainstorm. We had one this afternoon, and I was here earlier to look at the site plan, and when I came home, Cedar Circle was flooded out. Hours of construction during the day and no working on Sundays is something that we all discussed at the first meeting. I was informed that the city does have a ordinance of when they can start and when they need to stop. Yeah. And I think that I'm just telling you guys, where they're building these apartments, these 4- and 5-story apartments right next door, where's this going to go? Them guys are right there from first light, and they're there till dark. And I know that now that you got daylight savings time and everything else, it's just we need some quiet. I'm 70 years old. My wife just had open heart surgery with triple bypass. She's 77 years old. We like things to be a little bit quiet in the evening. I think it's just fair to everybody that's there. As I talked about earlier, I brought it up with the wildlife. There is a lot of Gulf turtles there, and they do come out on Taylor Road and eat all the grass that's on where all the single-family houses are. There's like a 5-foot area that the county has. It's all grass right there. So I know there has to be an abatement. I don't know if that's been done yet or not, but that's important. There's 2 pair of red-shouldered hawks that also have nests on that property right now. I see them all the time. My owls are back. They come back every spring. I hear them hooting out there at night, and I sit out there and I listen to them. I mean, we just love nature. You know, we like to try to keep it that way. There's a lot of raccoons, possums, and armadillos living in that woods, and I'm just tired of going up and down PGA Boulevard and seeing dead animals on the side of the road. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate you. I don't have any other green forms. Would you like to, Mr. Posey? No? I don't have a green form. Okay, would you mind just come on up, and if you'll fill one out for me, please state your name and address as you come, and then we'll have attorney get up and he can answer some of the questions. Well, it'll be one of the green ones.
Okay.
Oh.
You can do it after.
Sure, you can do that afterwards.
My name is Karen Novak. I just purchased 1310 Wesley Street, so I'll be the neighbor. So it's right on the corner. I just want to know if there's going to be any kind of green space between the properties. And this is my neighbor, Russell, who owns 1420 Carolee Street, so we will be back to back on this side. My talking point would be, would you be putting in a stoplight off of LPGA, because it'll make the road very busy, because it's busy now. I've been almost hit multiple times on that. It's going to be a very large loss of privacy. I just purchased 1310 Wesley on March 31st, 2023, to eventually build a quiet house in a quiet area. There will be noise, dust, and construction in my quiet neighborhood. Once the trees start coming down, there will be displacements of rats, snakes, raccoons, and other wildlife. I'm afraid that they will come our way. Bright lights and no clear sky viewing will be going to make bright lights and no clear sky viewing if there's going to be massive lights with lots of light pollution. My property value will go down because this massive building is going up next to us, and our little dead-end street will be very busy. How would you keep the residents happy with this massive building going on in our backyards?
Okay. Good. Thank you very much. We do appreciate you. If you don't, please remember to fill out one of the green forms and hand it to our secretary. Thank you. Okay, I have one more, and then we'll go on. I have Miss Jenny. Okay, Nazak.
Hi, everybody. Jenny Nazak, 501 Harvey. Yeah, I was really glad to hear the residential neighbors really bring up the importance of the wildlife, the trees, nature. My field is permaculture design, and that is the design of sustainable human settlements. So every aspect of the human-built environment to be properly integrated with nature. So for example, the roofs of buildings, we need to be planning for a little bit more rainwater collection, rainwater harvesting off the roofs, more buffers. You know, we have to figure out ways to be able to build the buildings we need to meet our human needs without stripping away the places where the wildlife lives. Like, as was pointed out, not only to avoid killing the animals, but also to avoid driving snakes and rats and things toward people's houses. And there are tried and true and proven ways to totally integrate everything we need, the residences, the commercial, the storage, all that stuff, integrated it with nature. So like they can't be separate, and it's really non-optional. And a lot of cities all over the world are doing some really striking, beautiful stuff. And I know you guys here are very progressive thinking planners. And I'm always here as a research resource. I sometimes bombard the city with emails about cool stuff going on in Singapore, and I will certainly continue to do so, and really appreciate you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate you. Okay, is this, okay. Okay, and Ms. Posey, would you like to respond to any? Yeah.
Again, for the record, Joey Posey, 420 South Nova. Just to touch on a few things, just want to be sure that that it's just completely the timeline. That, again, this was something that was approved about 3 years ago now. That, for the large part, this project is already approved. And that's not to say we're not happy to work with neighbors or, I just want to make sure that there's clear notice of what was there to begin with. And really what we're talking about is functionally the difference between the climate control building versus the outdoor roll-up door concept of what the storage facility could be. And again, I imagine that most would be of the opinion that the climate control building is the better alternative, given the options, and that's why we're here. That's why this gentleman wanted to put his time and effort into this, because you can do a better project. To touch on some of the neighbors' questions, that I know the gentleman from the first meeting, I think 3 years ago, I recognize him, and and I think we're actually doing better, because I just did the math on what it appears to be about 70 feet between the property line and the nearest first-story building, so there's a huge gap between those two.
Just to be clear, are you referring to the property line to the north?
Correct. Yes, the property line to the north on the storage facility portion of the project.
And is that more than would be permitted under the current PD? Because the current PD has all those single-story buildings instead of a single building?
Correct. Yes, correct. Yes. And to the east, the difference, I think, in that actually if you walk it through, that there's right-of-way, there's a landscape buffer of 25 feet, there's a gap between the property line and the buildings, so there's also, it doesn't sound like a lot, but there is a substantial area between the two, and then that's before you even get to the building that we're talking about, which is probably another good 100 feet jog to the building. So, and I know this sounds scary, but it's something that actually is a much better design than what's previously approved, and that's the goal here. Go for tortoises, just so the neighbors understand. And again, if there's any questions afterwards, I'm happy to walk through this. We're required to do a go for tortoise survey as part of the site plan, so that's something we're going to do. We're not looking to, destroy the habitats or anything like that. They have to be relocated. Have to be. Like, that's a have to.
And who enforces that, Mr. Posey?
Oh, the state.
The state?
Yeah.
DEP?
Yeah. And that
Or is
they
it
have-
Fish and Wildlife, or both?
Oh, goodness. I think it's Fish and Wildlife.
I think it's
yeah.
Fish and Wildlife, yeah.
Right, and they have to go to an actual habitat that is set aside for them. So it's required, and the survey, and we're only allowed to construct within a certain window of that survey. So if others migrate in or migrate out, it is what it is. You're stuck with it as a developer.
Yeah.
So that's something that the neighbors can have some assurance about. The Hawks is something new to me. We're happy to check on it. I haven't seen them, and but again, these are new questions for me I wasn't aware of before the hearing. So, but as we do with all projects, we're happy to work with the neighbors. I encourage them to reach out to me after the hearing. That we're happy to keep the dialogue going. Office isn't going anywhere, so please, if there's any questions or any comments that we can help with, we want to be good neighbors too. So,
Mr. Posey, I've got a question for you. The current development, the current PD.
Yes.
It would allow 11 single-story buildings totaling 91,000 square feet plus a 20,000 square foot office.
Correct.
This would be a 3-story building with more square feet, but I imagine the footprint is smaller
Much
than those
smaller
11.
footprint, exactly.
So does that mean you have less impervious area associated with this development than you would
I
have
would
had?
suspect so, but I'd have to defer to the engineer on the actual design of that. Because that makes sense, that it was a much wider spread on the building footprint, so that the design of this is to consolidate that into the building. There's still going to be RV parking, so I can't say it's going to be a perfect one-to-one type, but it's definitely definitely a better change than what was there previously with the buildings. Spread out in a roll-up concept, so.
Posey, also, a couple of questions that was asked. The buffer, would it meet all our city requirements between the residence and commercial.
It does, yep.
And there's no additional, I think he asked about the driveways leading from the back portion.
No,
Okay.
it's all internal, that the only access
Okay.
point is the one that was originally contemplated on Wesley. That's the only access point.
Okay, I think those are some of the other questions I've heard. Okay. Ms. Kim Buck?
To clarify, Kimberly Buck, Allen Engineering Group, 880 Airport Road. I'm the engineer for the project. Just to clarify and answer your question, there is slightly less impervious area with this concept, and we have actually more stormwater over a broader area on this site than we did before. So a little bit more green space, more pervious than what we had before.
All right, thank you. Mr. Robinson?
I have a question in terms of the wildlife impact and your environment and your designs, maybe the engineer or the architect. Is there a way to design your buildings? You know, like when FP&L is putting up a pole, they put up something for the birds to nest on. Is there a way that when you design your buildings that you could make some provisions for maybe the hawk that comes in, or the bird, some of the wildlife?
Right.
We all, you know, we replace their environment, their world with concrete and buildings. You know, we don't go out, we go up, but it's still, you're taking away something from them, and they have nowhere to go. Is there a way that we can make some solutions for them or some accommodations for the animals? I think it would enhance your property, the value, and the neighbors too. You know, I don't want to have snakes and raccoons moving into my backyard or moving out from where they live to where, you know, I'm pretty close to that neighbor, to your project. And it doesn't take animals long to roam to find where they can now live. So my thought is that maybe in your design, you could make some environmental accommodations for the wildlife, you know, maybe in the back of the buildings or on the roof or something that doesn't damage your facilities or.
And well, and this is going to come back to you for site plan. So, you know, there's an opportunity here to take a look at this. You know, we have substantial buffering, so, you know, a lot of this, I'm sure, can be accomplished in tree coverage and how we're designing that stormwater pond in the back, because that really is serving as almost a wildlife amenity in itself, because there's really no impact happening on the back parcel. It's the stormwater pond with the buffering, but again, the comments noted, and if you give us an opportunity once the site plan comes back, that, you know, we can really dive into it and look at it and see what we can do, you know, outside of that buffering and, you know, all of those other aspects that are part of this design of the project.
Yeah, because it's heartbreaking to see a lot of dead animals on the LPGA. And every time I drive down there, just about, you know, several times during the week, and I see new building going up or the land is being clear, I said to myself, you know, where's that wildlife going? And what are we doing for the future, what for the next for this generation and for the next generation? I see you're going to have some green space, but, you know, who's the green space for?
We'd love it for the wildlife, so I agree with you.
Okay.
You know, let us visit this in the site plan process. It'll come back to you, and, you know,
Okay.
as
You
part
say
of
you
that.
want to be a part of the solution.
Exactly. Yes,
not
we do.
just the discussion. So I'm going to hold you to that. I'm
Oh,
going to
you
remember.
should, because I will have to be back here eventually
Okay.
again, so.
Like I say, I mean, I'm one of your neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't have any other green forms. Are there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this item? Not, may I have a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, provided LDC recommendations are accepted, move approval agenda item number 6, PDG rezoning, preliminary plat, DV 2022-132 and DV 22-226, First Amendment to the Sunglow Mini Storage Complex PD.
Second.
Okay, it's been motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
I did say it.
I think you did.
Okay, opposers have the same right? Okay, it carries, thank you. I'm sorry, I was waiting for my delay. Item number 7, Ms. Washington, please.
Item number 7, Third Amendment to Clyde Morris Boulevard Industrial. DEV 2023-013 quasi judicial hearing.
Okay, may we hear from staff, please?
Hello again. Paula Long, planner for the city. I am back to present a request by Rob Merrill of Cobb Cole on behalf of Clyde Morris Landings Partners, LTD, to modify allowable multifamily signage. This property is located east of Clyde Morris Boulevard and south of LPGA. The aerial view here, you can see that the property is under development currently. This third PD amendment request is actually for signage only. The current future land use for the property is mixed use, and the zoning on the property is planned development general. A little bit of history about the property. This PD was approved in 2017 by the commission, rezoning 101 plus or minus acres of land that permitted for a phased development of an industrial park and associated site improvements. In 2019, the City Commission approved the first amendment to this PD to allow for a mixture of residential and light industrial uses within a portion of the planned district located on the east side of Clyde Morris Boulevard. Last year, the City Commission approved a second amendment to this PD to allow for modification of landscape buffering requirements to the mixed-use portion of the PD. Today, we're bringing to you a third amendment to this PD to allow, as I mentioned before, for signage parameters that are within the multifamily residential portion of the PD by adding a monument sign that will provide some clarity of the locations of the project as a part of the overall development. The theme for this evening, as you already know, is off-site signage. How are we going to actually be able to achieve this? The applicant did ask for some specific waivers. There is an increase in signage copy of 4.26 square feet to the signage for the additional sign. This PD, actually the Land Development Code only allows for one monument sign, and this would be a second, so that is one of the other waivers. And of course, the third, which I mentioned at the onset, is for the off-site advertisement. Why do we need that? Because a portion of this signage, as you can see, is actually giving direction by the copy to a portion of the development that is not on the same parcel where this multifamily project is happening. Provided that the proposed PD modification is accepted, staff does recommend approval of the third amendment to the Clyde Morris Boulevard Industrial PD to modify allowable signage parameters within the multifamily residential portion of the PD by adding a monument sign. Again, those parameters were to increase signage. I did actually leave out to reduce a little bit of the landscape requirement because the second sign, we just get back a little bit, is actually pushed back away from Clyde Morris Boulevard. It is not on the thoroughfare, therefore that additional landscape buffering is actually asked to be reduced in that area. A majority vote by the planning board members present and voting is required in order to recommend to the commission. This item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission for first reading on June 7th, 2023, and the second reading on June 21st, 2023. This does conclude staff's report, and the applicant, I believe, is still present for any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, actually, let me jump in.
Bruce.
I've been here a long time. I've actually worked for two other jurisdictions for extended periods of time, Port Orange and Vero Beach. And I think it's debatable under other codes, but not ours, whether a sign that advertises in one location in a planned development, other parcels in a planned development, it is an off-site sign. Technically, under our code, it is, and maybe that's something that we might need to change. The other thing is, and Mr. Mrozek, you were mentioning this. one of the signs in question is so far from Clyde Morris, it may not actually constitute a sign that we would regulate in the land development code, because we only regulate signs that are visible from the right of way. And I think the sign's going to be not facing Clyde Morris, and it's a good way into the entryway. It's actually
Correct.
you only see the narrow edge of the sign if you see it at all when you drive through Clyde Morris. So staff's being very conservative here, which they should be, and they are here because very technically this sign would be considered off-site. But when Ms. Long mentioned the theme of the evening is off-site, this isn't off-site the way the land development code's really intended to prohibit off-site signage. So.
Mr. Chair.
All right. Yes, Mr. Robinson.
I saw the design. Why can't they just redesign the current sign to accommodate instead of asking for a second sign? It seems to me if they just redesign and reword the sign that they currently have, it would resolve the issue, and there would be no need for an off-site sign, technically. And they could put another sign on their property wherever they want. If they could
Well,
just
the
do it.
applicant is actually here to be able to answer your question directly.
Okay.
So let's see. If
Did you have a discussion with the applicant about a redesigning of the sign, the signs, and what?
Just to make sure I understand, you're saying redesign of their current sign to be able to give the information that's being provided on the new sign? Well, I think the issue was, and the applicant can probably speak to this, is when somebody turns into the development and they work their way into the development, it's another sign that assists them in determining where to go, because it's a pretty big development, so they want to be able to point them in the right direction of where to go. And if they did it on a sign up front, it wouldn't give that information. It would just kind of send them down that driveway, and then they'd be on their own to figure out where they need to go.
But according to Mr. Gross, the second sign would be so far in, it wouldn't really be.
It's not even clear you have to approve it.
Right.
But the point is, when you're driving into the development off of Clyde Morris, the road then goes straight and there's an intersection, and at the end of each of those roadways, there's a different part of the development. And I'm sure they're responding to confusion on the part of the people that might be living there where they're supposed to go.
So do we need
They can speak to that.
Yeah.
do we need to approve it, or should we just go with your recommendations?
My recommendation is not that there is no need to approve it. What I'm saying is I'm not sure it can be seen from the right of way. Staff's presented this with you. The applicant wants to get approval.
Okay.
And I would go ahead and treat it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Hear from the applicant.
Let's hear from the applicant.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jessica.
Good evening again. Jessica Gao, Cobco Law Firm, 149 South Road Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida. The Peabody is only 6 minutes away. We're doing good.
We're good. We're good. We're good so far.
Yeah. I will answer your questions. I told my husband I'm going to pick on him because he's here for the magic show, but he gets to go to his first planning board. So hi, Jeremy.
Oh, okay. How you doing?
So as we know, this site is the Clyde Morris Landings, the mix of senior affordable housing, market rate, right beside B. Braun. And so as we have gone through these amendments, the original PD contemplated industrial uses, right? We thought that there'd be a really good mix to put in affordable housing here, and we've been kind of working out the tweaks ever since. And so the second phase of the Clyde Morris Landings affordable housing project, the 227 units of pure affordable housing, is the expansion that we're looking at, the signage that would kind of serve that. Interestingly, and I know Ben and we talked about this at the beginning, there is an agreement with the City Commission that requires the developments to be treated as one overall development in terms of amenities and things like that in order to get funding for the affordable housing abatement.
And I don't want to make Ms. Gal late for the Peabody, but let's talk about that for just a minute, because we, as a city, help fund this project because a substantial number of units are affordable.
Right.
But there's also market rate units. And so the requirement of that grant is that there's no discernible difference in terms of look, amenities, access to amenities between those market and non-market rate units. So if you compare this to, say, for example, other PDs where there might be a range of owners and a range of users, and we do in our PD normally require like a consistent look, this is even more so because of the conditions of the grant. So this is a very unified site. It is all and always will be Clyde Morris Landings as a whole, so.
I say, and so building onto that, if you look on page 3 of your staff report, and I think there's a picture in the slideshow, the existing slide or sign that staff put in there, they did a great job. The sign that's out there now is a little busy. There's a lot of words at very small font. And so if you look at the purpose of signage, navigation, a sense of entry, things like that, the proposal here, and you can see it on page 3, is to modify that existing sign to a simple sign that says Clyde Morris Landings Apartment Homes. You see that when you're coming off the roadway, you come in, you've got about 50 feet, and you've got a stop bar, a stop sign. Beside that stop sign, you have the sign that says, are you going to leasing? Are you going to senior living? Here's the direction you need to go. Because at that stop sign, really the original layout is the first phase is on the left, you turn and you go into the expansion, Clyde 5 as we call it. Now when Clyde 5 went through site plan approval, they had the ability to request one monument sign on their parcel. The problem is it'd be a sign in the middle of grass. The access point is shared. It's designed to be so. And so putting a sign on their parcel didn't really make sense. You're not providing navigation to residents. You're not providing directional information. Moving it back into this area, I agree with Ben. Can you see it from Clyde Morris? Who's to say? 50 feet. But just to be safe, we want to be transparent. You pull in, you have the directions, you know where you need to go. It lessens confusion, and it gets rid of the, more I think probably is happening now, people are slowing down to try to read that big sign right at the beginning to see where they're going. Let's get them in the property, off of Clyde Morris, and then direct them where to go.
And not that this would explain most of it, but I think 88 of the units in this complex are affordable housing for elderly persons. So you don't need to be elderly to be confused by that sign, but there is a good number of the total units where the residents might be particularly affected by that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any questions?
A quick
Questions, Mr. Waterhouse?
I think that there's an abundance of signs there. I think that, the city, in the years that I've been here, they've debated on the sign issue for a long time, and they've changed and everything. And, once you get too many signs, I think that's more confusing. Showing whether it's affordable housing or not, and whether your age, if you have to slow down, that's not important, but you want directional signs. That's a reason that we have, on your building, your leasing building, you can have a leasing sign.
If it was at the entry, I would agree.
Well, when they go in, they're going to go in, and I think that we're just getting an abundance of signs that we don't need. That, just because the advertising, you want them to know what the subdivision is. But when somebody comes in, I think that they have a reasonable expectations to go their way. And without the city giving directions of how to get there, I think that we're just putting a little bit too many signs in these subdivisions.
I would say that the amendment takes the number of signs along the right-of-way and lessens it, because if we don't do this, they may also want a project sign on their parcel, which would be along Clyde Morris.
But the project sign, I understand that, the name of the subdivision to go in and to get off the main road.
Right.
But once you start having signs, I think it's more confusing than people are letting on. And I think that we're starting to get to the point now where you're not going to be able to see the building for the signs. And it's something that I think that the commission will have to look at.
Sure.
All right, Mr.
Be
McLean?
quick. I know the timing here.
Yeah.
We're still good. We're still
The
good.
affordable housing component makes perfect sense to me. I think it's wonderful. There are times where navigational placement has its place. I think in this case it does. My question is the size of the sign.
Yep.
We're talking another 4.25 square feet. That's about 2 feet by 2 feet. Do we really need to do that for that small of a change to create a waiver? I guess is my question. we could do 64 and no, we don't have to talk about waivers. We're at 68 and somehow that's a magic number. I'm just curious why.
They've already designed the sign. They designed that sign with the layout that you see in the packet on how it would fit. It is just a little over. I don't know that they want, I think they have a sign permit application in pending resolution of this, and if they've got the mock-up, I think they'd request the waiver remain if we can, if it's not a deal breaker for you guys on the 2 square foot of copy area.
I would like to see on occasion that we look at the standard as opposed to saying, well, gosh, whatever number you want to pick, that's going to be okay. Again, it is a relatively small difference. Your point's well taken, but we have seen many situations of that being the case, and I think we need to be sure that it's brought up, that the standard is the standard unless there is a very definitive reason to make that change. So with that, I'm done.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to get into a sign wars, which we see in a lot of different cities and different places. The bigger, the brighter, the more exciting the sign is. You know, then you have another Daytona Vegas.
And I will say, just on the sign area, I think the waiver is for the existing sign that's already built out there, that was approved before. The proposed sign, the total is 64.38 when you count everything. So it's really 0.38 on that side that we're looking at.
Okay. I must have misread that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any more green sheets, don't have any more. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this item? Nope. May I have a motion, please?
You may, if I can get myself together here.
I make a motion we approve
please.
item number 7, Third Amendment to Clyde Morris Boulevard Industrial DEV 2023-013 quasi judicial hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers?
Have fun.
Okay, carries. Thank you very much. Passes.
Who was that seconded?
Aye.
Okay, I heard it from that area, I just didn't know who.
Thank you.
Ms.
Thank you for
Washington,
saving
may we
me.
have item number 8, please?
Yes, item number 8, Electronic Message Center, EMC signs, Land Development Code, LDC, text amendment, oh my goodness, Rose. Text amendment DEV 2023-049 legislative hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
Good evening, Rose Askew, Project
Best for
Manager.
last.
Wow, since I've seen you.
My item is on signage as well.
It's the theme of the day.
But before I start on mine, I wanted to talk a little bit about off-site signage. The way our land development code reads, off-site signage would be if I have a business that is on the beach side and I want to advertise on a property over on the mainland side that has nothing to do with my business. It is to make sure that signage that you put on your property is only for the type of businesses that are operating on your property. Tonight, the things we were talking about for off-site signage is not typically what we do when we talk about off-site signage. It's just that these developments have more than one parcel, and they want the signage to be on the parcel for the actual use you're talking about, but that's not how we interpret our code for off-site signage. So I just wanted to clarify that they're not really off-site. They are part of the development as a whole.
And if I
It's
can
just that
jump
it's
in.
more than one parcel.
Right, when you're driving into the Buc-ee's and you see Buc-ee's Car Wash and Buc-ee's Gas Station, you know they're the same development. You don't know they're separate legal parcels. Same thing with the Clyde Morris project, so, thank you, Ms. Askew.
You're welcome. So good evening. I'll go to mine now. So this is a request by the Growth Management and Planning Department to amend Article 6, Section 6.10J, Sign Types and General Standards of the Land Development Code to modify current development standards for electronic message center signs. A little bit of background. The purpose of signage is to enable the identification of places of residences and businesses. It allows for the communication of information necessary to conduct of commerce and to build signs that are compatible with surrounding uses and development. Under the old Land Development Code, the EMC signage regulations were pretty much only allowed for large developments. You had to have a minimum of 8 acres. You had to be a very specific type of use. And you had to be in very specific areas. For instance, they were only allowed along Interstate 95. You had to be 8 acres. You could have it if you were a hospital. Those are the types of ways that we allowed it. The current regulations that we have in our code were pretty much just transferred from the old code. We did a little bit of tweaks to language to clarify it a little bit, but we didn't change any of the regulations for how and where and the types of uses that we currently allow EMC signs to be located in. So the proposed amendment tonight is to amend Article 6 to modify those current development standards for EMC signs. The amendment includes text that would allow EMC signs as either a ground sign or a wall sign. The current regulations only allow them as ground signs. The way that development is going today and the type of developments we have, EMC signs are also on walls now. So in order to try to keep up with the development patterns and things that are going on today, we are amending the code to be able to allow them also on walls as well as the ground signs. It removes the standards that currently restrict EMC signs to be allowed in specific locations, zoning districts, and only for specific types of uses. There's a full copy of the amendment that was part of your planning board packet. It was the attachment to it. But I also want to make sure I point out that the proposed amendment does not include any changes to the land development code that would allow a ground or wall sign size to be changed, location or number of signs allowed. So meaning you can have the sign, but whatever zoning district you're in that limits the size of the sign and how it has to be, you still have to abide by those. It just doesn't restrict it only to 8-acre parcels, specific types of uses. It's more now, if you have a business, if you're in a zoning district and you want to have a ground or a wall sign, you can have a ground or a wall sign that's at EMC within the parameters of what the signage is allowed for that zoning district. The purpose of signage is to provide provide development standards that are inclusive of a wide variety of uses and development types to allow EMC sign standards that are consistent with current development standards. And I know in the old days, I've kind of been here a little while, people were very leery about electronic message center signs. They make you run off the road because you're trying to read them and all those types of things. Well, the design standards and stuff we have today, none of that applies to it. It really does not. And the way they're designed, we require them to be set back so far. There's very specific kind of lighting they have to make sure they don't create those kinds of distractions. And what I did is I provided some of the signage that we currently have. These are EMC signs. This is the one for the Volusia Mall that they did a few years ago. This is one of the signs out in Tomoka Town Center. No, I'm sorry, in One Daytona. There's rock bottom, different types of signs, and they help you when you go in to know where you're going and what you're looking for. You see this sign and you'll know to go this direction for this, that direction for that, and it keeps you from having to have an abundance of signs because you can now advertise 15 signs on one versus having a sign at every single area you have to go to figure out where you're going. This is the sign. It says for Bel Air Plaza. At the Kennel Club. They're all EMC signs. They're larger. They allow you to be able to put more, to advertise different types of businesses. Even though it's up on the corner, they're still part of the same development.
Perfect timing.
So, with that information, staff recommends approval to amend Article 6, Section 6.10J, sign types and general standards of the Land Development Code to modify current development standards for electronic message center signs. A majority vote of planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Rose, I have a quick question and then I'll turn it over here.
Yes, sir.
As far as the EMC signs, the size of the property will or will not matter?
The zoning designation
The
determines
zoning
the
will.
size of signs and stuff you can have. So even though you may get an electronic message center sign, if your sign can only be 10 by 20, sign can't be any larger than that. So you're not going to be able to see these huge electronic message center signs. It's based on the zoning district that you're in and the sign regulations that are for that zoning district.
Okay.
It just gives you the ability to have another type of sign.
Rather than just regular prints?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Robinson?
I want to commend you in being very proactive in making your, in identifying these changes so we don't have a lot of waivers and confusion. I do have some issues, and it's not too many. I only have 2 minutes.
I was about to say you don't have the time.
You're going to time me?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to the attachment A.
Okay, and the staff report?
Yes, it's under. Am I to think that the strikeouts is what you're trying to delete?
That's correct. Let me
That's
get my
correct.
glass. I need to get my glasses.
Okay. And I'm on page 1 of 3.
Okay.
And I'm looking at
I'm there.
B4. I have a problem with B4, 5, and 8. To start out with B4, you want to remove the 10 feet from the right-of-way and at least 25 feet from the side property lines.
That is correct, because that language applied to properties that were 8 acres, very large properties. If you've got a property that's in a mall, or if it's a standalone business, they're not even going to be able to meet that criteria. This language in here was specifically for very large properties like One Daytona, like the mall, the shopping center that we just built, Tomoka Town Center. So they can't meet these standards if you're just going to be, say I have a little mom and pop business and I want an electronic center sign on my wall. There's no way to meet this. So the criteria we are removing was criteria that was specifically tied to only being able to have them on very large properties.
And the other thing I want to add is we have setbacks,
Correct.
size limitations, and other restrictions that apply to all signs generally. Until this change, as Ms. Askew said a few minutes ago, we had additional ones for EMC. So even
Right.
without these additional ones, there are setback requirements, there are size requirements, there are spacing requirements, and they're the ones for all signs generally.
Correct.
Right.
And number 5, item B5, you're saying that you're going to strike out the 1,000 linear feet of a conforming single-family detached dwelling.
The general regulations for sign locations, this was specifically for EMCs. In our land development code in Article 6, Section 6.10, we already have general sign regulations for setback requirements for being away from residential properties, but we had to put some additional ones in for large developments. So these that are being removed, they will now have to comply with what the general regulations are for setbacks, being away from residential, other properties, those types of things, based on the zoning, based on what the signing language is in the land development code. So these are going away, but there's already signage in place that tells them, if I want to have an EMC now, I don't have to have 8 acres, but I do still have to meet what the setback requirements are in 6.10 of the land development code for general signage and things.
So you're saying that you're just making them consistent with the general sign?
That is correct. That's what they will have to do. They're allowed, in addition, they're allowed to have an EMC as a wall or a ground, but they still have to meet all of the general regulations for signage.
So I won't be looking out my window to this massive sign or the
No, you will not.
sign. Okay,
No.
because the land development code will take care of it.
That's correct.
And also, that's the same idea in number 8.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rose. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
The regulation for Mr. Robinson's property is on.
Ask him by your window. Mr. McLean.
Just, Mr. Chairman, just a couple comments. This is an area where the city commissioner in my zone, Stacy Cantu, is an advocate of the idea of looking at EMC and looking at it from a 21st century perspective. There was a time that attractive nuisance was the thing for EMC type scenarios. Now it's so commonplace now. Maybe it's not really good for the advertisers. They don't pay near as much attention to it as you once did. It's much more common, and I think it definitely makes sense to clean this up. So I'm certainly in favor of it.
Okay.
I just want to say, I truly appreciate the update. It makes it easier for us when reading, because now we know which is correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Our thinking doesn't matter. It's the rule, and when we've got the rule in hand, it's easier to make a decision.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Good point.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any green forms. Is there anyone that would like to speak for or against this item? Nope.
Mr.
May I have
Buckley?
motion, please?
Move
I make the
approval of
motion
agenda
with-
item number 8, LDC text amendment, DV 2023-049, EMC signs.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned, properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposers have the same right. It carries. Thank you very much. This time, we're gonna go to item number 9, and we'll have other business. Downtown Baloo Road Redevelopment Area Board Report. None. Midtown Redevelopment Area Board Report.
Midtown Board met, awesome meeting, accomplished a great deal. And the thing that stood out most to me was they're really, really working towards budgeting, working towards keeping the budget, working within the budget. And the last thing we were discussing, Mr. Lynn Thompson brought activity in the community because it had been just dead flat for so long. One of the items was brought to the board was an upcoming play which was written by Lynn Thompson, a native of Daytona, and his daughter is one of the star individuals in the play. I did not get the date, or I didn't write it down, but I said that I would bring it to you all tonight. I'll get with him and I'll let you all know when it is. But it is supposed to be next month, I think it is. And it's a play about growing up, basically, in the Daytona Beach area. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting. I mean, it was really an interesting meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Beachside Redevelopment Area Board Representative. Okay. Item number 9, I have public comment. Mr. Nicholson.
There he is. I was waiting for him.
He's on deck.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beachside. Kathy, it would be nice to know where it's going to be held.
I asked, and as of tonight,
They still don't know.
it was not finalized. He said he's working on the center down,
More? No?
right down the street.
Peabody?
Midtown, Cherry,
Peabody.
Dickerson?
Not Peabody. No, not Peabody. News Journal Center down the street.
Down the street.
Way to
Okay.
go.
All right. Now, on the LED sign, I was here when we had this discussion years ago. If you recall, the LED signs were little rectangular boxes
Right.
with only a certain number of words. So you had to read quickly, and whatever script was there, you could never get all of the
The entire
script while you're waiting or when you were driving.
Right.
That's been gone for 30 years. There were members of our community, because it was LED, wouldn't allow it anywhere. And she sat on this board and fought it for years. And when they put the lighting in at the Ocean Center, it was LED lighting and she didn't want it. And all it did was light up some trees. And she was against it because she was fearful of anything changing, then everything would change. Well, now everything has changed. but it fits. The signage in today's world is LED, and we have to go with it. So I'm glad you all changed that. What's good for the goose is good for the gander kind of thing. And lastly, it came up tonight, and if you all recall the last meeting, there was a woman, she's been at her house for a long time, and they're going to bulldoze behind her for a development. And they're going to take all the trees out. So now she'll have no trees behind her home. Well, it's sort of kind of our own fault for doing this because we allowed developers to bulldoze everything down to the dirt and then put little trees in because the neighbor has all those trees that are there. And when you buy, you don't realize that someday all those trees are going to be gone because the next person has a right to bulldoze from lot line to lot line, and all the trees are gone. And they have to pay to put new trees in. So I'm asking you to consider something that when we do the development, that we leave 5 feet, 10 feet, whatever it is on the outer perimeter of the property, natural. They don't have to landscape it. They don't have to do anything. No water, no sewer, no nothing. It's just natural. You keep it natural. And this way, one, birds, tree, the whole 9 yards, it helps us. There's a small problem to that, which I don't really see as a big problem, is I understand putting all of you salvaging trees in one location for the natural habitat for the birds and bears and whomever. If we stack it all together, I know.
Yeah, thank you.
In one location, the probability that they're going to survive is greater, so you don't want to take out a little bit. But these are huge tracts. If we can find some way of, instead of grouping it together, having more of it for our entire neighborhood and all of us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we have one more green real quick. Jenny Nazak.
Thank you all. Jenny Nazak, 501 Harvey. As a city girl who loves to have all various services located near where people live so people don't have to get in their cars all the time and we get to walk and enjoy each other. So I start to notice whenever there's opposition to any kind of development, it always seems to boil down to people are worried about traffic. Okay, it's traffic. Or the water concerns, the flooding, huge, massive concern. And the removal of habitat, wildlife. So many of these things can be addressed by, well, things like what John was mentioning, like leave the tree buffer, roads, putting the roads on a road diet and making sure that there is a path for the pedestrians and the cyclists that would maybe incentivize people to get out of their cars, make it more feasible for some people to make, if it's a short trip, you know, to a short trip with shaded trees, more feasible to walk to the shops. And then that'll siphon some of the traffic off the roads. Because right now, when people are opposing development, they're opposing stuff that's meeting human needs. They're opposing places for people to live, apartments for people to live, stores for people to shop for things that they need. Storage units, because God love us Americans. I mean, geez, we have like our storage. But, we end up fighting things that people need. Whereas if we're integrating stuff more with nature and, you know, making like linear, basically like linear parks that are along the walkways, things like that, like stacking things more, overlapping things more, we can have such a win-win. Another thing that comes up a lot, it's the water usage. Smart landscaping, Florida natural landscaping sucks up stormwater, and then magically during the blistering drought, it remains green and lush. That's amazing. We should be so reverent of that. Wow, nature, cool. Another thing, this is something I'm very interested in, the eternal sewer versus septic. There is an option 3. There are actually toilets that use almost no water. I know we're all very concerned about water usage. So in the boating community for forever, there have been waterless toilets. And there are systems that are scalable, and there are more demonstrations happening. And there is going to be a compost toilet informational talk and probably a humorous presentation at the Ormond Beach Farmers Market on May 4th. There is a gentleman named Rob Greenfield, a young man who does eco demonstrations. Like, he walked around wearing trash on his body to show how much trash we throw away. He's going to demonstrate compost toilet. Anyway, cool stuff. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. I have no more comments on Green Sheet. Thank you very much. We do appreciate public comments. This time, staff comments. I'm good. You good? Mr. Gross?
No, thank you.
Okay. Board comments.
Quick comment, Mr. Chairman,
sir.
just to let you all know, I will not be at next month's meeting. My wife and I will be in Ireland that day, so I wanted to let you know that I'll be thinking of you while I'm gone, but just wanted to say I will not be here next month.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I will also not be here next month.
Wow. Ireland too?
I will be somewhere in Europe, but not Ireland.
Okay.
My first trip overseas.
I also will not be here next month.
Did I start something?
I have a prior engagement that I have to attend to, so.
And I, too, will not be here next month. I'll be somewhere in South Africa or somewhere. And we're traveling, so...
I may not be here. I have planned a trip to Aruba.
Oh, you win. That's a good one.
How about you, Mr.?
What about you?
You'll be here.
Well, I don't think I'm going to be here either.
It's peer pressure.
I need a
I'll
break.
find someplace.
I need a
Wow,
break.
we have about...
There may not be a quorum.
I apologize for the run, Mr. Chairman, was unprepared.
No, we had actually, Dennis and I discussed this prior to starting. Mr. Surveillance, are you going to be here?
No, I won't. I was going to be there via telephone. But let me just take this time also just to thank the board for your prayers and concerns. I am recovering and I'm doing quite well. And I look forward to whenever we do meet. Don't look like it's going to be next month, but whenever we do meet, hopefully being there in person. So once again, thank you.
Looking forward
Thank
to it.
you all.
Well, we're glad that you're doing better, and our prayers and thoughts are certainly with you. And we do appreciate that you're
Thank you.
on with us tonight. Okay.
Thank you.
My quick comment, real quick, and I know I was getting late, is that if we as a group or a city can really think about wildlife, especially on the side of the roads, there was just one on the LPGA, one of the deers got hit again Thursday, well, yesterday, Wednesday, yeah, I forget what day I'm at. And so, again, as these development goes in, land is being cleared. They're trying to find somewhere to go. Is there a way we can either put some fencing along, because those animals just kind of run all the way across? And that's been one out of several that I've seen personally at the side of the road. They go into the median over there to eat, and then try to come back, and so that's something I think we need to really look at. We want the best place for our citizens, but at the same time, we want to make sure our wildlife is preserved and taken care of. All right. Other than that, we do appreciate all of you. It looks like we may not be seeing you next month, but probably the following month. But please be safe. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful night. Meeting adjourned.